With the flick of her pen, she writes,
Hello, friends. Hello. We continue on, and the Stallion returns as we get a little spooky today with chapters 18 and 19. Grab a cup of something warm and cozy. Settle in as the veils thin. And we pick up with chapter 18. A Rafters gang member comes by for a visit. Not long after Marguerite's arrival, the big knocker on the front door banged 3 times. Edgar, who was closest to the main hallway, went to the door and opened it. Standing there in a wide-brimmed hat and riding chaps was an older man and a young girl. The man, not recognizing Edgar, held out his hand in an attempt to shake Edgar's. "I'm Norman Rafters, and this is my granddaughter, Ellie. We've come by to see Miss Pamela Cartwright. Does she still own the place?" Norman asked, looking out past Edgar to where Amber stood at the foot of the stairs. The hairs at the back of Edgar's neck bristled, but he reached out his hand and shook with a firm grasp and an open heart. The first thing he felt when their hands touched was remorse, and so he stepped away from the door to allow the two inside. "Come on in," Edgar said, politely showing them into the grand room where all guests made their first stop upon entering the mansion. "Miss Pamela's not well today, but I can help you," Edgar said, sitting down in the winged-back chair with the rising sun print on it. "Oh, that's too bad," Norman said, fidgeting a little with the button on his shirt. "Ellie here has something to say to her, don't you, Ellie?" Norman turned to the girl, who looked nervously around the room. It was a dare," Ellie said, voice starting to tremble. "An old lady asked me if I wanted to earn $5. I didn't mean no harm." Ellie stammered and backed towards the main hallway door. "Now what's this about?" Edgar said. After the last few days, he was not up for more tomfoolery. "The rat," Norman said. "A cruel prank, yes, but Ellie didn't mean no harm. She was only playing a joke, just like the old lady said. But we older folks know the meaning of a rat nailed to a door, and, well, them's fighting words in this old country down here," he paused. "But she didn't mean no harm, did you, girl?" The old lady, she told me you all would think it was funny," Ellie said, a tear rolling down her cheek. "But I don't want to play anymore. She's been haunting me now. Comes up behind me in the night when I go outside. I see her standing in the trees looking at me," Ellie said, starting to cry now, and Norman stepped over and put his arm around the girl. "This stops here and now," he said. "Joke or no joke, whatever or whoever this old lady is, we don't want no harm to come to nobody." He paused as Edgar sat with his hands folded together. His main guide tapped him on the arm, and Edgar decided it was time to end this conversation and figure out what old woman had been ordering such inane tricks. Someone was up to something here, and the old and seemingly remorseful Rafters clan was none the wiser to its origin. Chapter 19. The Crone. Ellie got off the school bus and looked in both directions before crossing the street away from the bus stop and bordering Thunder Rose Forest. She still hadn't recovered from her visit to the Cartwrights, and she felt that no one truly understood just how scary this old lady was. You couldn't refuse her, or so it seemed. Ellie, at 12 years old, was an old soul. She knew deep in her bones that this was no ordinary old lady, and yet she felt helpless to articulate that to anyone. Her best friend Natalia was off at boarding school, which left Ellie to herself until the fall break, when Natalia would return for a visit. Ellie and Natalia had texted every night before bed, and they had this next fall break all planned out. There would be the pumpkin maze at the Myers Ranch, and the corn maze at the Daly's Ranch, and the apple picking at the Broward's orchard. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Ellie felt she wasn't alone. She trembled but kept walking. Only a few yards of Thunder Rose Forest separated her from the next town and the tracks leading over to the Rafters side of town. A horse whinnied at Ellie from behind the fence at the Cartwright Ranch, and she kept to her own side of the road, still flanking the woods. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Ellie picked up her pace as she made haste towards the crossroads and the long walk to her place. Why the bus didn't drop her closer to home was all on Ellie. She told the driver to let her out down by Natalia's, that Natalia's mother and her grandmother had dinner waiting for her. The bus driver knew the two girls were best friends, and so unwittingly dropped the girl seemingly miles from home. Crunch, crunch, crunch. And then cackling laughter. Ellie was nowhere near Natalia's ranch, and definitely too far from home to run and make it inside. The trees of Thunder Rose Forest shivered. Ellie started to cry, and an ancient hand reached through at precisely the right moment, dragging Ellie into the forest and out of range of pretty much anyone. The trees closed around Ellie as the crone dragged her further into the great woods.